Computer security, also cybersecurity, digital security, or information technology, IT, security, is the protection of computer software, systems, and networks from threats that may result in unauthorized information disclosure, theft of, or damage to, hardware, software, or data, as well as from the disruption or misdirection of the services they provide. The field is significant due to the expanded reliance on computer systems, the Internet, and wireless network standards. It is also significant due to the growth of smart devices, including smartphones, televisions, and the various devices that constitute the Internet of Things, IoT. Cybersecurity is one of the most significant new challenges facing the contemporary world, due to both the complexity of information systems and the societies they support. Security is of especially high importance for systems that govern large-scale systems with far-reaching physical effects, such as power distribution, elections, and finance. While many aspects of computer security involve digital security such as electronic passwords and encryption, physical security measures such as metal locks are still used to prevent unauthorized tampering. IT security is not a perfect subset of information security, thus does not fit completely into the security convergence schema. A vulnerability refers to a flaw in the structure, execution, functioning, or internal oversight of a computer or system that compromises its security. Most of the vulnerabilities that have been discovered are documented in the Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures, CVE, database. An exploitable vulnerability is one for which at least one working attack or exploit exists. Actors maliciously seeking vulnerabilities are known as threats. Vulnerabilities can be researched, reverse engineered, hunted, or exploited using automated tools or customized scripts. Various people or parties are vulnerable to cyber attacks, however, different groups are likely to experience different types of attacks more than others. In April 2023, the United Kingdom Department for Science, Innovation and Technology released a report on cyber attacks over the last 12 months. They surveyed 2,263 UK businesses, 1,174 UK registered charities, and 554 education institutions. The research found that 32% of businesses and 24% of charities overall recall any breaches or attacks from the last 12 months. These figures were much higher for medium businesses, 59%, large businesses, 69%, and high-income charities with £500,000 or more in annual income, 56%. Yet, although medium or large businesses are more often the victims, since larger companies have generally improved their security over the last decade, small and mid-size businesses, SMBs, have also become increasingly vulnerable as they often do not have advanced tools to defend the business. SMBs are most likely to be affected by malware, ransomware, phishing, man-in-the-middle attacks, and denial of service, DOS, attacks. Normal Internet users are most likely to be affected by untargeted cyber attacks. These are where attackers indiscriminately target as many devices, services, or users as possible. They do this using techniques that take advantage of the openness of the Internet. These strategies mostly include phishing, ransomware, waterholing and scanning. To secure a computer system, it is important to understand the attacks that can be made against it, and these threats can typically be classified into one of the following categories. A backdoor in a computer system, a crypto system, or an algorithm is any secret method of bypassing normal authentication or security controls. These weaknesses may exist for many reasons, including original design or poor configuration. Due to the nature of backdoors, they are of greater concern to companies and databases as opposed to individuals. Backdoors may be added by an authorized party to allow some legitimate access or by an attacker for malicious reasons. Criminals often use malware to install backdoors, giving them remote administrative access to a system. Once they have access, cybercriminals can modify files, steal personal information, install unwanted software, and even take control of the entire computer. Backdoors can be very hard to detect and are usually discovered by someone who has access to the application source code or intimate knowledge of the operating system of the computer. Denial of service attacks, DoS, are designed to make a machine or network resource unavailable to its intended users. Attackers can deny service to individual victims, such as by deliberately entering a wrong password enough consecutive times to cause the victim's account to be locked, or they may overload the capabilities of a machine or network and block all users at once. While a network attack from a single IP address can be blocked by adding a new firewall rule, many forms of distributed denial of service, DDoS, attacks are possible, where the attack comes from a large number of points. In this case, defending against these attacks is much more difficult. Such attacks can originate from the zombie computers of a botnet or from a range of other possible techniques, including distributed reflective denial of service, DRDoS, where innocent systems are fooled into sending traffic to the victim. 15. With such attacks, the amplification factor makes the attack easier for the attacker because they have to use little bandwidth themselves. To understand why attackers may carry out these attacks, see the attacker motivation section. A direct access attack is when an unauthorized user, an attacker, gains physical access to a computer, most likely to directly copy data from it or steal information. Attackers may also compromise security by making operating system modifications, installing software worms, keyloggers, covered listening devices, or using wireless microphones. Even when the system is protected by standard security measures, these may be bypassed by booting another operating system or tool from a CD-ROM or other bootable media. Disk encryption and the Trusted Platform Module standard are designed to prevent these attacks. Direct service attackers are related in concept to direct memory attacks, which allow an attacker to gain direct access to a computer's memory. The attacks take advantage of a feature of modern computers that allows certain devices, such as external hard drives, graphics cards, or network cards, to access the computer's memory directly. Eavesdropping is the act of surreptitiously listening to a private computer conversation, communication, usually between hosts on a network. It typically occurs when a user connects to a network where traffic is not secured or encrypted and sends sensitive business data to a colleague, which, when listened to by an attacker, could be exploited. Data transmitted across an open network allows an attacker to exploit a vulnerability and intercept it via various methods. Unlike malware, direct access attacks, or other forms of cyber attacks, eavesdropping attacks are unlikely to negatively affect the performance of networks or devices, making them difficult to notice. In fact, the attacker does not need to have any ongoing connection to the software at all. The attacker can insert the software onto a compromised device, perhaps by direct insertion or perhaps by a virus or other malware, and then come back some time later to retrieve any data that is found or trigger the software to send the data at some determined time. Using a virtual private network, VPN, which encrypts data between 2 points, is one of the most common forms of protection against eavesdropping. Using the best form of encryption possible for wireless networks is best practice, as well as using HTTPS instead of an unencrypted HTTP. Programs such as Carnivore and Naris Insight have been used by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, and NSA to eavesdrop on the systems of Internet service providers. Even machines that operate as a closed system, i.e., with no contact with the outside world, can be eavesdropped upon by monitoring the faint electromagnetic transmissions generated by the hardware. Tempest is a specification by the NSA referring to these attacks. Malicious software, malware, is any software code or computer program intentionally written to harm a computer system or its users. Once present on a computer, it can leak sensitive details such as personal information, business information, and passwords, can give control of the system to the attacker, and can corrupt or delete data permanently. Another type of malware is ransomware, which is when malware installs itself onto a victim's machine, encrypts their files, and then turns around and demands a ransom, usually in Bitcoin, to return that data to the user. Types of malware include some of the following. Viruses are a specific type of malware, and are normally a malicious code that hijacks software with the intention to do damage and spread copies of itself. Copies are made with the aim to spread to other programs on a computer. Worms are similar to viruses, however viruses can only function when a user runs, opens, a compromised program. Worms are self-replicating malware that spread between programs, apps, and devices without the need for human interaction. Trojan horses are programs that pretend to be helpful or hide themselves within desired or legitimate software to trick users into installing them. Once installed, a RAT, remote access Trojan, can create a secret backdoor on the affected device to cause damage. Spyware is a type of malware that secretly gathers information from an infected computer and transmits the sensitive information back to the attacker. One of the most common forms of spyware are keyloggers, which record all of a user's keyboard input/keystrokes, to allow hackers to harvest usernames, passwords, bank account, and credit card numbers. Scareware, as the name suggests, is a form of malware which uses social engineering, manipulation, to scare, shock, trigger anxiety, or suggest the perception of a threat in order to manipulate users into buying or installing unwanted software. These attacks often begin with a sudden pop-up with an urgent message, usually warning the user that they've broken the law or their device has a virus. Man-in-the-middle attacks, MITM, involve a malicious attacker trying to intercept, surveil or modify communications between two parties by spoofing one or both parties' identities and injecting themselves in between. Types of MITM attacks include: IP address spoofing is where the attacker hijacks routing protocols to reroute the target's traffic to a vulnerable network node for traffic interception or injection. Message spoofing, via email, SMS, or AUT messaging, is where the attacker spoofs the identity or carrier service while the target is using messaging protocols like email, SMS, or AUT, IP-based, messaging apps. The attacker can then monitor conversations, launch social attacks or trigger zero-day vulnerabilities to allow for further attacks. Wi-Fi SSID spoofing is where the attacker simulates a Wi-Fi base station SSID to capture and modify internet traffic and transactions. The attacker can also use local network addressing and reduced network defenses to penetrate the target's firewall by breaching known vulnerabilities. Sometimes known as a pineapple attack thanks to a popular device. See also malicious association. DNS spoofing is where attackers hijack domain name assignments to redirect traffic to systems under the attacker's control, in order to surveil traffic or launch other attacks. SSL hijacking, typically coupled with another media-level MITM attack, is where the attacker spoofs the SSL authentication and encryption protocol by way of certificate authority injection in order to decrypt, surveil and modify traffic. See also TLS interception. Surfacing in 2017, a new class of multi-vector, polymorphic cyber threats combine several types of attacks and change form to avoid cybersecurity controls as they spread. Multi-vector polymorphic attacks, as the name describes, are both multi-vectored and polymorphic. Firstly, they are a singular attack that involves multiple methods of attack. In this sense, they are multi-vectored, i.e. the attack can use multiple means of propagation such as via the web, email, and applications. However, they are also multi-staged, meaning that they can infiltrate networks and move laterally inside the network. The attacks can be polymorphic, meaning that the cyber attacks used such as viruses, worms, or Trojans constantly change, morph, making it nearly impossible to detect them using signature-based defenses. Phishing is the attempt of acquiring sensitive information such as usernames, passwords, and credit card details directly from users by deceiving the users. Phishing is typically carried out by email spoofing, instant messaging, text message, or on a phone call. They often direct users to enter details at a fake website whose look and feel are almost identical to the legitimate one. The fake website often asks for personal information, such as login details and passwords. This information can then be used to gain access to the individual's real account on the real website. Preying on a victim's trust, phishing can be classified as a form of social engineering. Attackers can use creative ways to gain access to real accounts. A common scam is for attackers to send fake electronic invoices to individuals showing that they recently purchased music, apps, or others, and instructing them to click on a link if the purchases were not authorized. A more strategic type of phishing is spear phishing, which leverages personal or organization-specific details to make the attacker appear like a trusted source. Spear phishing attacks target specific individuals, rather than the broad net cast by phishing attempts. Privilege escalation describes a situation where an attacker with some level of restricted access is able to, without authorization, elevate their privileges or access level. For example, a standard computer user may be able to exploit a vulnerability in the system to gain access to restricted data, or even become root and have full unrestricted access to a system. The severity of attacks can range from attacks simply sending an unsolicited email to a ransomware attack on large amounts of data. Privilege escalation usually starts with social engineering techniques, often phishing. Privilege escalation can be separated into two strategies: horizontal and vertical privilege escalation. Horizontal escalation, or account takeover, is where an attacker gains access to a normal user account that has relatively low-level privileges. This may be through stealing the user's username and password. Once they have access, they have gained a foothold, and using this foothold the attacker then may move around a network of users at the same lower level, gaining access to information of this similar privilege. Vertical escalation, however, targets people higher up in a company and often with more administrative power, such as an employee in IT with a higher privilege. Using this privileged account will then enable the attacker to invade other accounts. Any computational system affects its environment in some form. This effect it has on its environment can range from electromagnetic radiation, to residual effect on RAM cells, which as a consequence make a cold boot attack possible, to hardware implementation faults that allow for access and or guessing of other values that normally should be inaccessible. In side-channel attack scenarios, the attacker would gather such information about a system or network to guess its internal state and as a result access the information which is assumed by the victim to be secure. Social engineering, in the context of computer security, aims to convince a user to disclose secrets such as passwords, card numbers, etc., or grant physical access by, for example, impersonating a senior executive, bank, a contractor, or a customer. This generally involves exploiting people's trust, and relying on their cognitive biases. A common scam involves emails sent to accounting and finance department personnel, impersonating their CEO and urgently requesting some action. One of the main techniques of social engineering are phishing attacks. In early 2016, the FBI reported that such business email compromise, BEC, scams had cost U.S. businesses more than $2 billion in about 2 years. In May 2016, the Milwaukee Bucks NBA team was the victim of this type of cyber scam, with the perpetrator impersonating the team's president Peter Feigin, resulting in the handover of all the team's employees' 2015 W-2 tax forms. Spoofing is an act of pretending to be a valid entity through the falsification of data, such as an IP address or username, in order to gain access to information or resources that one is otherwise unauthorized to obtain. Spoofing is closely related to phishing. There are several types of spoofing, including email spoofing, is where an attacker forges the sending, from, or source, address of an email. IP address spoofing, where an attacker alters the source IP address in a network packet to hide their identity or impersonate another computing system. MAC spoofing, where an attacker modifies the media access control, MAC, address of their network interface controller to obscure their identity, or to pose as another. Biometric spoofing, where an attacker produces a fake biometric sample to pose as another user. Address resolution protocol, ARP, spoofing, where an attacker sends spoofed address resolution protocol onto a local area network to associate their media access control address with a different host's IP address. This causes data to be sent to the attacker rather than the intended host. In 2018, the cybersecurity firm Trellix published research on the life-threatening risk of spoofing in the healthcare industry. Tampering describes a malicious modification or alteration of data. It is an intentional but unauthorized act resulting in the modification of a system, components of systems, its intended behavior, or data. So-called evil-made attacks and security services planting of surveillance capability into routers are examples. HTML smuggling allows an attacker to smuggle a malicious code inside a particular HTML or web page. HTML files can carry payloads concealed as benign, inert data in order to defeat content filters. These payloads can be reconstructed on the other side of the filter. When a target user opens the HTML, the malicious code is activated. The web browser then decodes the script, which then unleashes the malware onto the target's device. Employee behavior can have a big impact on information security in organizations. Cultural concepts can help different segments of the organization work effectively or work against effectiveness toward information security within an organization. Information security culture is the totality of patterns of behavior in an organization that contributes to the protection of information of all kinds. Anderson and Reimers, 2014, found that employees often do not see themselves as part of their organization's information security effort and often take actions that impede organizational changes. Indeed, the Verizon Data Breach Investigations Report 2020, which examined 3,950 security breaches, discovered 30% of cybersecurity incidents involved internal actors within a company. Research shows information security culture needs to be improved continuously. In Information Security Culture from Analysis to Change, authors commented, it's a never-ending process, a cycle of evaluation and change or maintenance. To manage the information security culture, 5 steps should be taken: pre-evaluation, strategic planning, operative planning, implementation, and post-evaluation. Pre-evaluation, to identify the awareness of information security within employees and to analyze the current security policies. Strategic planning, to come up with a better awareness program. Clear targets need to be set. Assembling a team of skilled professionals is helpful to achieve it. Operative planning, a good security culture can be established based on internal communication, management buy-in, security awareness and a training program. Implementation, 4 stages should be used to implement the information security culture. They are: 1. Commitment of the management. 2. Communication with organizational members. 3. Courses for all organizational members. 4. Commitment of the employees. Post-evaluation, to assess the success of the planning and implementation, and to identify unresolved areas of concern. Thank you for watching this video.